Hello, my fellow extraterrestrials. Look, I finally made an effort for you again. I finally got all together again. And that's because we're going to talk about tardigrades. It is finally time for my famous, as my friends would put it, tardigrade tirade. And what they mean by that is like there's certain subject matters for which you really don't want to get me started because I will go on like a 2 to 6 hour tirade. And my friends do this to me on purpose. They actually enjoy it. They let me carry on for this obscene amount of time very passionately about certain subject matters that I really get into, and tardigrades just happen to be one of them. So we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna locate my tardigrade, one of my many tardigrades, and my coffee, and then we're going to get into the famous tardigrade tirade. Okay. Got my tardigrade. Got another one on top of my jellyfish. My bestie got me that one and she got me this t-shirt, which everyone knows I love puns. Don't know if I love puns more than I love tardigrades. I don't know. But this is clearly a tardigrade pun because tardigrades, if you are unfamiliar with tardigrades, they are also called water bears. And just like the salmon, when they're swimming upstream, get caught by bears, like actual bears, this is a giant tardigrade, being a bear, being a water bear. I approve this pun. And this is just too cute. So, obviously, as you can see, I really do love tardigrades. I have a list of weird creatures I love. Sea cucumbers, jellyfish, clearly. Pretty much anything in the cephalopod category. Sea creatures in general. Anything that seems alien. Just bizarre, fascinating creatures who are way better than we are in every aspect. And for all we know, probably more intelligent. Like, we don't really know what's going on in their little heads. We just think we do because human arrogance. But hey, they might be more intelligent than we are, and they're just chilling in the ocean. Well, tardigrades, actually, before we get into the tirade part of it, little bit of background information on tardigrades. They're kind of everywhere. They are microscopic animals. They're not viruses, they're not bacteria, they're not amoeba, they're animals. And this is going to be very important for this tirade, okay? I want you to register that although they are microscopic, we can only see them under a microscope, they are animals. They are marvelous little animals. I love them. And they, even though they are microscopic, they're teeny tiny, they are hardy little animals, which again, important for this tirade. It's going to matter here in a minute. So, tardigrades are microscopic animals that can be found in pretty much any water, anywhere. You could just have little microscopic tardigrades floating around in water on leaf droplets outside your house. You don't know. They're everywhere. And I love them for it. Sorry, I'm still a bit gunky, obviously, from allergies, apparently. Anyway, so why is it important that I emphasize that tardigrades are animals and that they are hardy little animals at that? Well, it's because I'm not the only one fascinated by tardigrades. Apparently, scientists feel the need to torment tardigrades to see just how much the little buggers can endure, which is apparently quite a lot. And this bothers me. And I know I tell things in a comical way, and people think I'm joking, and people think, oh, this is just like a funny comedy skit. And I am very humorous. I do have a sense of humor. I just kind of deal with everything in a humorous way. Humor is how I cope with things. I make jokes and I get over it, and I try not to take anything too seriously, even myself. So although this is gonna be told in a light-hearted manner and We're going to joke and we're going to have fun, because I always have fun. I do want to emphasize, I actually care about tardigrades. I care about life in general. All life is sacred. Maybe. Sometimes I wonder about Homo sapiens, but that's a whole different thing. We all kind of, anybody that follows my channel or has read my work, we all kind of know how I feel. Like, I haven't been very good at keeping my personal opinions on human beings out of things as much as I try to be objective. But anyway, as far as tardigrades go, they are animals. This is important because animals have rights. And I care about animals and their rights, including tardigrades. Like, it really shouldn't matter that they are microscopic. But, you know, I guess people don't think about it. People don't care about it. Out of sight, out of mind. We can't see them. So nobody's worrying about it. But honestly, I think a lot of it, again, Homo sapiens and their hubris and their arrogance and their selfishness in general, a lot of it, I think, is, well, we don't see them. We don't interact with them, at least not on a level that we're aware of. We can't cuddle them. We can't pet them. Some people might find them cute. I do. But I feel like scientists get away with what they do to tardigrades because there's a lack of awareness as to what's going on. There's a lack of awareness about tardigrades in general. And because they just kind of figure, well, who's going to care? It doesn't concern us. It doesn't impact us. It's not like we're harming your pets. How do you know I don't have pet tardigrades? Thank you very much. I mean, even if I can't see them. And just because you can't see something or interact with it on that level like you would other pets, other animals, doesn't mean that they still shouldn't have the same rights as other animals. You following me? You see where this tirade is going? Okay. So, that being said, let's talk about what set me off on the actual tardigrade tirade. Because it is more tyrannical than my usual tirades. Usually tirades, as my friends put them, it's just me carrying on about something that I'm extremely passionate about. Not usually in a negative way, more of an excited way. In this case, I have to say, I don't approve of some of what scientists have been doing to tardigrades, because you wouldn't do this to any other animal. You wouldn't send, like, we're going to start with the milder thing, and I think it came first, actually. I think I'm doing them in order of which these experiments occurred. And that was, they just decided, hey, these things are kind of like extremophiles. If you're aware of, extremophiles can survive in just about any environment, including ones that we used to think were impossible. Yeah, tardigrades are like the animal version of those. Again, they are not bacteria or viruses or anything like that. They are, in fact, complex animals. They just happen to be small, very small, microscopic. But because they are tolerant to the point, almost to the point of extremophiles, and they can withstand so much, scientists were like, hey, let's just launch them into space and see how long they survive the expanses of space. So they launched tardigrades into space to expose them to the harsh environments of space just to see how long they would survive. I think they were up there for 3 years. Now, here's the thing. Just to side venture here a little bit away from the obvious issues I have with the actual experiment, like the cruelty of it, let's also venture over here to the sci-fi aspects of it. So, at the risk of sounding a little bit like, I can't remember the character's name, but he was played by Jeff Goldblum in the Jurassic movies, at the risk of sounding like him and Nature Finds a Way and all of that, let me just remind people that just because we can do something or are curious about whether or not we can do something doesn't mean we should. Because something that I've always known, and I thought this was just like common knowledge, even as a child, I thought this was something we were going to hear more about as I got into like higher grades of school and uni and all of that. I didn't realize that this was still a hotly debated, yet to be proven sort of thing. But it was my understanding that everybody was aware that the expanses of space were actually ideal environments for microbial life. That it's kind of like, I've always viewed things like not just microbes and viruses and that sort of thing, like not just the living, well, viruses aren't considered living, but they're still just regular microbes, but even the subparticles, all the ingredients, if you will, the microscopic things that go into making up life, I've always viewed them as like pollen almost, in the sense that scientists used to think, well, people in general used to think that, you know, if you were touching the inside of a flower, or the bees could potentially damage the inside of a flower, and they get the pollen over, like it might damage the flower, it might be damaging to the pollen, it's an issue. And then they realize, no, this is how pollen spreads itself. This is how pollen gets around and makes more. This is how life does its thing and keeps going. And I've always kind of viewed microbes that way. I don't think the expanse of space and asteroids and comets and things interacting with them and spreading them all over the cosmos is harmful to them. I think that's how they get around and make more life in other places, just like pollen. I know it's not like the best of analogies, but you get the idea. And so I've never viewed it as space is bad for microbes. Maybe not the best for some microbes. We don't know how different things are going to react to those environments. Some things react positively, some things react negatively. Just like we weren't sure how the tardigrades were going to react in space. Just because they can handle extreme environments doesn't mean that it's good for them. But there was always that possibility that they would thrive in a different sort of way. And what I'm getting at with this is, when I say the sci-fi aspects of this, see, we have sent other things into space, or have discovered other things in space that have proven to, when they come back from that environment, they come back to Earth after being in space for an extended period of time, they have proven to be 3 times more deadly than they were when they left, like salmonella. Some things should perhaps not be sent into space, because it might come back as a super whatever it was before. So although, in my opinion, the karma there would have been just, because super tardigrades, can you imagine, like tardigrades aren't, as far as anybody has ever been aware, harmful to humans, but can you imagine like souped up, pissed off tardigrades coming back to Earth and getting their revenge? I would have been for it. We would have deserved it. Now, shoving that little side venture, that sci-fi side venture aside for the moment, back to the actual ethical issue here. The ethical issue being, they are animals. We would not have allowed scientists to just launch any other lab animal critter into space like that. They would have had rights, right? Where were the animal activist groups for this? Okay. Maybe they could have gotten away with it, even if the animal activist groups had gotten involved and been like, this is harsh, this isn't okay, this is extreme. Maybe they could have set some boundaries and still gotten away with it if they only do this, or if they observe this, or if they're whatever. They could have laid conditions, right? So that brings me to the next issue, because I can almost see the scientific venture of wanting to know, can tardigrades survive in space? Can we have space tardigrades? Might we be looking for alien life in the form of tardigrades? I can almost see that reasoning behind that experiment. I like aliens as much as the next person. I'd be glad to find tardigrades we can actually see that are not microscopic. That would be lovely. A planet of giant tardigrades. Lovely. I'm for it. But the second experiment, this is where I got to be careful with my wording. I don't want to get the ban hammer dropped on me, but it might happen here. This is where I have so many issues. So, although we could potentially say, with the first experiment, we should have been more concerned about their physical well-being, obviously, but we were testing that, and nobody has been paying any attention to their psychological well-being, which another thing about that first experiment, like, can you imagine being out in space, being isolated, seeing some of your fellow tardigrades die before you? Like, we have seen where species have been taken from their preferred environments and put in others, and then they just straight up die of loneliness. So we don't know the psychological aspects, but given that the tardigrades, well, at least some of them came back alive, one can assume that they might have a hardy psychological being as well. Like, maybe they can cope in methods like we can. Maybe they can compartmentalize. Maybe they can get over things. I don't know. Maybe they're better at it than we are. Hold that thought. Anyway, so assuming that there was at least some reasonable argument to be made there for determining if they were physically capable of withstanding space, you know, there's still the argument that, well, their psychological well-being didn't go into that at all. So there's that. Now, speaking of psychological well-being and just outright torture, both physically and psychologically, the second experiment, this one really gets me. This one really gets me. So I'm sure everyone, well, maybe not everyone. It depends on how much you care for history and how much is being taught anymore, and difficult subject matters. So during World War II, Himmler, if you know who Himmler is, he did some really awful things. Okay, he was interested in all sorts of human experimentation. Now, I guess there's a silver lining to some of that, in that we made some medical advancements from some of the horrors that came out of Hitler and Himmler's doings. But one such thing was this interest in twins and their connection. And if you've heard of Einstein's quantum entanglement theory, it's, if you take that from just the molecules being aware of one another, even across vast distances of space and all that, if you take that up a few levels and think about, you know, complex life forms like us being quantumly entangled with one another and being able to sense when something is wrong with one another, even across vast distances of space. So they were trying to test that sort of thing on twins, particularly because twins, hey, we're weird. As a twin myself, I can say we're weird. We're really weird. But I like weird. I would have thought that was obvious, actually. But that's a whole different thing. And obviously, experimenting on twins is wrong, right? Human experimentation, torturing twins to see if the other can feel it, that's wrong. We understand this when it comes to us, to people. We understand this when it comes to other animals, cute, fluffy animals, dogs and cats and such, right? I mean, people still get all bent out of shape over Schrodinger's cat, and he didn't actually do it. He just said, what if? I mean, I can go into experiments that actually were done on animals all day, and we're just not going to talk about them because there were a lot of horrible things that scientists did to animals in the name of the science. You shush or you'll be the next one. I know in my videos people can hear my kitty cats trying to get their 2 cents in on all of this, on anything. Can I ever just make a video and not talk about you? I'm talking about tardigrades right now. Shh. Anyway, rude. Also rude, I can still hear you. Back to the horrific things. If that was what was bothering you, I won't talk about the horrific things done to kitty cats, okay? The horrific things being done to tardigrades, though, same thing. That was the second experiment. So basically they were trying to quantumly entangle tardigrades and then torture them to see if the others could feel. See, one, if it worked, if they actually managed to quantumly entangle them, which I think was the ultimate goal. And then 2, to see, all right, does this one react to the pain and suffering of this one? Now, all of the issues I have with this, not just the physical torture and the quantumly entangling them to begin with and all that, but the psychological aspects of it as well. And before anybody comes at me with, well, do they even have a nervous system? Do they have this? You know what? You cannot know what is going on in the consciousness or awareness or whatever, the sentience of any other living being. Okay, just because something doesn't have a brain or doesn't have a nervous system that we can identify, sometimes we're wrong and then we find out, oh wait, their whole entire body was their nervous system or their brain. All these different things that we don't know. All right, that's the biggest emphasis. It's on the cover of my book because like that's the greatest gift that Socrates ever gave us was his statement, I know that I don't know. We don't know. I don't care who it is. I don't care how many degrees they have. We do not know. We are not gods. Even if we were created in a God's image, we are not gods. We are not all-knowing. We, as far as we know, most of us don't have like memories of our past lives if we had past lives, and aren't walking around with memories of being a tardigrade that we can say, oh, I was a tardigrade, I can tell you for sure. We don't feel it. No, we don't know. And the fact that scientists have admitted that they observed aversion behavior, negative aversion behavior in response to things that the tardigrades clearly remember what that felt like the first time, that suggests that, one, they didn't like it, and two, they may have some PTSD from it. They're displaying aversion behavior. They're trying to avoid it. And of course, scientists will just tell you, oh, well, that's just reacting to their environment. It's just a living organism instinctually reacting to an environment because instincts tell them to keep trying to survive and procreate. How do you come to that conclusion? You are clearly seeing something react to something in a negative way that it has experienced before, and you're not even considering that it might be reacting due to psychological aspects, that it might have bad memories and doesn't want to experience it again because it hurt or upset it in some way. The fact that they just glaze right over that, like this is not even an issue for them. I'm sorry, if I see something react that way to something, like if you see a cat or a dog flinch, you immediately think somebody has struck this animal, somebody has abused this animal, this is not okay. So if we're seeing tardigrades display aversion behavior to something, maybe that should be a clue to back off. Maybe that should be a clue to maybe study further their reactions in different environments and when they encounter things. Just observe. Don't do something to them to cause them to react like that. Just observe them in general and see, okay, are they displaying awareness? Obviously. Should we maybe not do these horrific things to them? I would argue, yeah, leave them alone. Give them a break. I am not okay with it. So, experiment 2. This is one of those things where even if you can find an argument for why we should waste money doing this, why we should torture tardigrades for this, I can't find where that argument has enough weight to it to balance out all of the negative. So, again, where's the animal activists on this? Tardigrades are animals. Nobody asked for your opinion, but you better be agreeing with me on this. Sorry, my kitty cats are just something today. Something, I don't know. They got cabin fever. I don't really know. The weather's nice and they're driving me nuts. So excuse the background meows. They're Siamese. There's only but so much shushing I can do. They have opinions, and apparently they feel the need to join me in the tardigrade tirade. So my apologies on their behalf. Now, if I may, on to the third experiment that, for the life of me, just why? Never mind, I'm still why about the second experiment. But the third one, I don't see any potential benefit to this either. I'm sure some scientists can chime in and say, oh, well, we can use it for this, that, or the other. Yeah, great, there's other ways. There are other ways, other things to experiment on besides tardigrades, non-living things even. So the other experiment, they're freeze-drying tardigrades and tattooing them. And then, like, bringing them back. They're trying to, they're just testing their new technology. They're just trying to see how small of an identifying tattoo can we put on something. So this is a microscopic tattoo because this is a microscopic creature. So that is the whole point of this third experiment. And I have links. This is a relatively new thing, so I'm only but catching up. I read it through the first few times. I'm trying to keep up with, because I'm that person that keeps up with the science journals and what's going on, and especially what they're doing to tardigrades. And so I have a link and photos and stuff in my tardigrade tirade blog on my webpage explaining all of this in greater detail. But the short of it is they're basically just, there's a method that they have of more or less freeze drying the tardigrades and seeing if they can use their brand new microscopic tattooing capabilities to leave tattoos on tardigrades. It's like, why did tardigrades catch all the flies? Like, really? Just because these are creatures that are capable of withstanding quite a bit, that doesn't mean that they don't feel it. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have a lasting impact. It doesn't mean that this isn't going to come back to bite us in some way. Like, this feels like some sort of bad karma waiting to happen to humanity, okay? And rightfully so. Because what did this cute little bugger ever do to anybody? Nothing. You don't think they're aware of us? Like, it took us forever to be aware of them because we can't see them. They don't make noise. They don't bother anybody. These little buggers don't even make us sick. Like, think about it. Think about all the other stuff that happens to us when we encounter microbial life. These guys are just chilling. They're just floating around in water, wherever water can be found. Salt water, fresh water, doesn't matter. They're just chilling. They've done nothing wrong. I don't know how much more I can emphasize that. Clearly, I have concerns about their well-being because I love them. I think they're adorable. I think they're great. These might be where we come from. These might be the missing link. These might be our ancestors. We might have started off as tardigrades and then evolved. I mean, there are so many things that we can learn about tardigrades and maybe should be studying about tardigrades in humane ways by, like, observing them and maybe looking at tardigrade fossils, things that are already dead, not torturing them. Can we just please not torture tardigrades? That's all I'm asking. And, like, maybe asking for more people to care. I don't think that's asking too much. People to care about the tardigrades. Can we at least put regulations on scientists? Can we at least have a study on, like, the psychological aspect of tardigrades? Can we study their behavior? Can we look more into that? This whole aversion behavior thing. They didn't even question whether they should proceed. They didn't even say, you know what, let's hold off on this and study this behavior and see if we're having a negative impact. They didn't even do that because it's a microscopic animal. And out of sight, out of mind, I guess. So there it is. I don't think I went too terribly long in this video. I can certainly carry on about it and in much greater detail and with much more personal opinions on the whole subject matter. But I did want to at least give it my all for this video because tardigrades are this level of important to me. I have the t-shirt, I have the socks, I have the, like, the tardigrade, it's always in my background video on top of my jellyfish. Like, I just got tardigrades everywhere, and this little tardigrade that sleeps in my bed with me. I love tardigrades. And, I mean, if this doesn't convince you, if you don't find this adorable, maybe check out some of the other interesting sea creatures and see if you don't at least come to a similar understanding of how I'm feeling about this. This is my hill to die on. I realize that. But look up sea bunnies, okay? Look at photos of sea bunnies, which by the way are not microscopic, and tell me that some part of your heart doesn't just melt for them. And like maybe, you know, I'm catching up on the blogs, as I said, so this video is coming well and after the Earth Day stuff, even though the blog was forever ago. But let's consider, like in honor of Earth Day, let's consider the impact we're having on all of the lovely, bizarre sea creatures and maybe care a little more. That's all I'm asking. I mean, I know it might be a big ask. I think it's a little simple, use your humanity, use your empathy, some compassion. But considering how much this world, in this day and age, we don't seem to appreciate one another or have empathy for one another. I mean, to be fair, my compassion and empathy for Homo sapiens is limited in comparison to the other species, but like, they did nothing wrong. We deserve it. Like, whatever is bothering us, whatever we're doing, like, most of it is self-inflicted. We deserve it. It's our karma. But these guys, they're just here. Let's show them a little bit of love. A little bit of love for the tardigrades. Alright. I'll stop now. I'll behave myself. So, anyway, that's the famous tardigrade tirade. I'm sure there's been other experiments that I haven't come across yet, that haven't made the page. I'm sure they're still torturing tardigrades all over the place, left and right, because of course they are. But at least I've made you aware of 3 of them thus far, and maybe you'll keep your eyes out, and maybe you'll find them before I do. I know I keep my eyes open for any time scientists do anything remotely evil to tardigrades, because how rude. Just in general, how rude. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned a little something about tardigrades. Stay extra, my fellow terrestrials.